wanted to talk a little bit today about my GM for Hire service, specifically in regards to the Star Wars role playing game and what it is I can offer you and your group if you're looking to play Star Wars and travel to a galaxy far, far away. I first saw Star Wars at the age of 2 in the cinema, and my mum talks about how I got out of the seat. I went down the front of the cinema because it was empty, and I just took a seat in the front row and just was captivated by this for 2 hours solid. And ever since then, I've been in love with Star Wars one way or another. Immediately after that, I started getting the old Star Wars toys, which were made by Palitoy in the UK and Kenner, I think, in the US. And I also owned the John Williams double album of the Star Wars, what's now known as A New Hope um, soundtrack. I used to play that while I was playing with the Star Wars figures. So fast forward another 10 years, when the first edition of Star Wars role playing game came out, I was creating stories for that galaxy. And the thing that was great about the role playing game was you could get yourself in the headspace of the Star Wars galaxy, and you got all the great toys as well. You got your blasters, lightsabers. For me, most of all, I love the idea of having your own ship. A YT-1300 like the Falcon, but there's also all sorts of different ships you can get for Star Wars if you would rather something that was away from what we're all familiar with in the films. But I always found that the YT-1300 was a good starting place because everybody can picture what the inside of the Falcon looks like. So it was always a great base for my players. So, but I would be open to I would recommend players go with whatever type of ship they want to go with. That's part of the fun of it. And the fact that the role playing game, the action would go from being on foot in a kind of gunslinger situation, face to face in the street, one on one with the blaster shooting against an enemy, up to larger, skirmishes with groups of stormtroopers, and then you could also field mass battles. But on top of that, you can jump in any of the walkers, repulsor lifts, which are the speeder type vehicles, also starfighters like X-wings and TIE fighters. All of these things are available in the Star Wars role playing game, and the system actually works simple enough that you can jump between each of these kind of different types of transport and combat to really, as I say, from the smallest kind of encounter right up to, recently I had a capital scale battle. So the players were flying around in their fighters and freighters, and meanwhile one of the characters was captaining a huge capital sized ship that was taking on a Star Destroyer. So really, there's the sky's the limit, and the universe is the limit in terms of Star Wars, but what you can do in the game. So yeah, obviously I want to, you can expect to see all these different technologies and be able to use them. You also expect to see all the kind of iconic aliens and the kind of exotic worlds and climates, and some of the iconic ones. Tatooine is often makes an appearance every now and again in the Star Wars role playing game, one way or another. So worlds like that, and Hoth and Bespin, all these kind of iconic things you could expect to see in a Star Wars game. But there's also, if you look in Wikipedia, you'll find out that there's thousands of planets, certainly hundreds, in the Star Wars galaxy, and many of which don't appear in the films. So yeah, there's all weird and wonderful locales and strange and not always helpful characters that you bump into, and some will be rivals, and some will be allies. So yeah, that's what you'd expect in any role playing game, I suppose. But yeah, it's a lot of fun, and especially if you're like me, you love the films, then I think this is a great game for you. The platform that I use to deliver the service is Discord for the voice chat, and also there'll be a specific channel in there for text and pictures that I would be sending during a session. I would also use Roll20, which is where I would host the maps for specific encounters. I wouldn't say it's 100% of the time you're going to have maps, but I certainly use them as much as I possibly can. But occasionally there are situations where it'll be theatre of the mind that I would use. And the other thing as well that's good about Roll20 is it allows me to host I bought the John Williams scores for episodes 46 a while back, actually for this express purpose for my own group that I run on Star Wars. And basically every session I know obviously I know the story because I'm the game master. I do pick out certain tracks to create a mood and feel, so that there's a shorthand there, and that when players are trying to imagine something, the music hopefully will be evocative as well. That it makes you feel like, oh yeah, that's where I'm at. Right, okay, that's what's it's a really great resource having the music, and hopefully it creates a bit of atmosphere for the players as well, and trying to capture the feel of the films as well. So that's really helpful. And yeah, the other thing that I do as well is for each adventure, I wouldn't say I'd necessarily every session, because sometimes an adventure will run 3-4 sessions, but every adventure I'm creating an opening crawl to start the session with, which you can see examples of on my YouTube channel here. And yeah, what it does is just basically tells you when we start the session, we'll play that. You get the John Williams track, and it's the title sequence that you're familiar with, but it's about your session. So that gets you right into the headspace right off the bat, and then we can get on with the game. So yeah, as I say, when you're playing the game, you can take various different types of characters. Now the Star Wars Re-Up system has about 26 character templates. I'm not going to go through all of them here, but I mean examples would be a bounty hunter, a brash pilot, like somebody with flying X-wing, a gambler, a smuggler, or a tongue-tied engineer. They're examples of just character types. So I mean, essentially, you can also play Wookiees, and there's an arrogant noble there. So you could any of the kind of classic Star Wars types you can imagine that are in there if you want to play, something that was similar to some of the characters in the films. There's also Jedi characters in it. Now, the one thing I would say is if anybody was thinking of taking a Jedi character, it's the Jedi character can become incredibly powerful, as you would expect. Now, that once a character becomes so powerful, it then tilts the balance and play that the Jedi character, if he gets too many powers too quickly, he will dominate the game, and that's not fun for the other players. So the one thing I would say is that I wouldn't have any more than one Jedi character in a party, and in addition to that, if I was a Jedi character or player, I would expect that my Jedi powers wouldn't be good. But this is I tend to set my games in the Galactic Civil War, which, if anybody doesn't know, is episodes 4 to 6, the original trilogy. Most of my games, I can do other periods, but that's my preferred area of expertise, if you like. So, yeah, obviously that in that era, the Jedi aren't supposed to be, they've been wiped out by Order 66, and there's only a handful of them left. So it is the case that that a Jedi character, as they progress in the game, it's going to be fairly slow for them learning new abilities and powers, and actually becoming, quite proficient with them. I did play a 50 session campaign, which was all completely homebrewed at one point, and we did have two Jedi characters in the party who struggled for about the first 15-20 weeks, but then after that they became incredibly powerful, and they did. That's what happened. It started bringing the action to the two Jedi character because they were so powerful. So I would be extremely careful about how quickly that the Jedi characters could progress. So that would be something, if you were thinking of taking, I would mention that I would be very cautious about giving too many powers. So far as the tiers that you can see on my Patreon, there's a couple of different options. There's casual play, which is really, I would just run any of the classic adventures by West End Games. There's too many to list again. There's dozens of these, but some examples would be Tatooine Manhunt, Strike Force Shantipole, Starfall, and Crisis in Cloud City. So that might, if you're not familiar with West End Games, those names won't mean anything to you. But what it does mean is that there's, each of these games that came out, I can run them. They usually take between 2 and I think 5 weeks, but it does vary from adventure to adventure. So it would be, you could basically play an adventure and or a couple of adventures, and that would be it. There's then campaign play. In the campaign, it's going to be designed to be. Well, first of all, we would talk with the group. Sorry, I should say there's a session 0 session that I would do, and that would be everybody who was playing. We would come into the virtual space and talk to each other, and we would go through character creation for each of your player characters, and we would talk about what it was that the whole group wanted from the game, and hopefully if everybody's wanting the same things, then we can proceed. But obviously if there was a group that was wanting to play, say for example, some of the players wanted to do bounty hunter missions and the other ones wanted to play rebel missions, well, we would have to just try and find other people to join. So we would have a rebels group and we would have a bounty hunter group. There's not going to be too much point if the players aren't happy with what it is they want to do. So that's certainly one of the things that would happen in the session 0 session. We would try and make sure that we're all coming from the same handshake, and we'd also talk through what we expect to see in the game, what you want to see in the game. That's a really important part, because I want to deliver the campaign that you want to play. So if it was a bounty hunter campaign, yeah, we can do that. And yeah, really, if you want more emphasis on role playing, if you want more emphasis on action, I mean, I try to get a kind of 50-50 balance. If you look through on my blog, you'll see the Green Vipers write-ups. So I mean, those will give you a bit of an idea of what a pretty good idea, I would say, you could expect in a given session, or sometimes in a couple of sessions. Usually, I don't usually write more than 2 sessions in a single post, so if that gives you an idea. And yeah, so getting back to the campaign then. So assuming that everybody has agreed what they want from the game and we're all happy to proceed, I would then set about doing a campaign, and the campaign I would create a setting for you, like a base. You would have certain ships that you would potentially have or have access to, and there would be a group of allies. Usually, whatever your base was, there would be other NPCs, non-player characters about that I would play, and these would be allies of yours that you could expect to see and interact with, whenever you want. You would also expect to see some recurring villains in there, because you need a good villain to rally against. And campaign play, I prefer, you can run the individual adventures like you would in casual play, but what I would do is try and put narrative threads through the different adventures, so that they kind of piece together to tell a bigger story and a more sweeping, rather than just that we play that adventure and that's it done. It's continuing the story of the heroes, yourselves, the player characters, and how they are progressing in their journey through the galaxy and whatever that is that they're trying to achieve. If it's the rebels, causing damage to the Empire through different, sabotage missions are fairly common. Disrupting the Imperials generally is what happens in a rebel campaign. But there's also, as well as running a rebel campaign, we could run a trader campaign where you it's called the Minus Cluster, where you are able to trade in different goods, fly to different planets, make different contacts, and there's also missions and so on that you can do in that. And there's also the Darkstrider campaign, which was a New Republic campaign. Those are the kind of main campaigns. There's also the Longshot campaign. Apologies, that's what I've actually run recently, which were in the Classic Campaigns supplement from West End Games, if anybody's familiar with that. The first mission in the Longshot campaign was fully realised in the book, but the rest were only essentially sketches or, a kind of guideline of what would happen in each of the missions. And they've now all been fully realised, and they have been. They all feature on the Green Vipers sessions, which are on my blog. So if you're interested in looking at that, by all means. Obviously, it will be spoiler heavy if you were to want to play the Longshot campaign. So I wouldn't recommend reading too much of it if that's what you wanted to play. Normal campaign play would use some established material. It wouldn't be fully homebrewed. There would be certain elements would be homebrewed, but I would also use some of these, these kind of outlines and expand the missions to fully realise them for your group. Then there's also unique campaign play, which that would be me essentially building the whole campaign from nothing. So that would be the same, everything that you would expect in campaign play, except I wouldn't be using anything that was, had been published by West End Games, even as a kind of shortened synopsis of a story. It would all be me from scratch, and I would do it on the basis of what it was that you were looking for as a group, because that's the whole point. Is to deliver something that's a lot of fun for you, and that your characters are at the centre of that. One other thing I should have said about creating the characters for campaign play, I would be probably asking the players yourselves to provide some background, some as to what happened with your character. Now, the great thing about the Star Wars role-playing game is that a lot of there's kind of backstories there already, but I'd want you to expand on it a little bit and give me some, potentially family members or, things that your character wants to achieve, potential rivals or enemies, and these are all things that I would want to draw in to the campaign, both in the standard campaign play, where it's a mixture of published adventures and homebrew, and certainly for the unique campaign play, because the player characters are the centre of the story. I'm just there to set the scene, provide the atmosphere, the maps and the entertainment, and hopefully you're going to have a blast exploring the universe that I set out for you. So I'm here to facilitate whatever it is that you're looking for from your Star Wars campaign, and and hopefully that would be an enjoyable experience for everyone. I should also mention that some players like plot armor and some players don't. And what I mean by that is that some players like their sessions to be set in the Star Wars universe around about the events of the films. So you could potentially be running into some of the characters from the films, but if the plot armor was on, you couldn't do anything that would change what happens in the films. So, for example, if you were to bump into Darth Vader, you would have to run away from him, because you know that you're not going to kill Darth Vader, because Luke, doesn't kill him, redeems him. But you would know that you wouldn't be able to do anything about him. So you can have the plot armor on, which is my group preferred, and we talked about this before. But equally, I'm open to switching it off, meaning that we would start at a certain position in the story, probably after the Battle of Yavin in episode 4, New Hope, and if the plot armor's off, anything goes. So you can go to Tatooine and try and oust Jabba if you want, or you can go right after the whole now Vader and the Emperor and try and bring them down yourselves without we don't have to do that, but we can do it. Either way is equally valid, to be honest with you, because I can understand why people would want to dovetail with the films. But if you fancy something a bit different, plot armor can be switched off, and we can see what happens. So yeah, and I'll probably post up a few videos in the next few days, just putting some of the basics of the rules down, and giving you an idea how to play it. It is really quite intuitive, the system. It's quite easy to understand the basics of it once we get going. So I'll do a follow-up video about that, and probably another one about character creation and the process, how you do that, and the process that we would do, including if I would also be open to that, particularly for campaign play. If a player wanted to create one of their characters from scratch, not using any templates or anything, that can be done. That's absolutely fine. Basically, if you can dream it, if there's a character that you want to play in the Star Wars universe, we're going to achieve that. That's not a problem at all. We can cover everything. And then, as I said, there was only, I think it was 26 templates in the re-up book, but on all the expansions, there are literally dozens more of these templates. But again, we can do it from scratch, and we can do something pretty interesting. So I hope that's maybe giving you a bit of an idea of what you can expect. Sessions would be 3 hours, and you can see my Patreon if you want to sign up for a group. What I would be looking for would be 6 players to be on board. So for a single group, and I think that's a good balance. I've had a group of 8 before, which was a bit on the large side. I think 6 is a really good number, and a lot of the scripts as well for the published adventures are written with 6 in mind, so that would be ideal. So yeah, and the charges, the Patreon charge is per person, but it does cover me. It does cover the 3-hour session, and there'll be 4 of those sessions in the monthly Patreon rewards, because it's a monthly subscription, so it would be 4 sessions, and I would be looking for 6 players each signing up to that. And that, yeah, all of that includes, there's also a free 0 session, as I say, where you create your character and we talk about what everybody wants and expects from the game, and what are the boundaries of what's acceptable and what's not, and what we want and what we don't want to see. That's all great. And if people don't like it after the first session, then there's I'll refund you your money, because I'm pretty confident, having done this for about 33 years now, that I can run a game which should be fun and engaging for everybody around the table. But if you don't like it after the first session, then you can have money back, and that's it. There's no problem with that. That's if you don't like it, you don't like it. That's fine. I've obviously not done my job if you don't like it, but I'm fairly confident that people will want to continue the adventures. So yeah, please have a think about it, and don't hesitate to contact me. I'm available on a whole lot of platforms to talk, which hopefully will be on the screen at some point here. So yeah, thanks for listening, and yeah, I'll maybe see you or talk to you over Discord soon.